everybody. Welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie, Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie, Jessica.
So it's that time of the week. It is time for us to do our 1-minute book recs, where we go over all the books that we read in the past week with 1-minute synopsises of each book. Before we get started with that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are still doing our Road to 1K giveaway. And what are we still giving away, Mandy?
Beth Flynn's 9 minutes. Oh my gosh, I cannot get this in there with the ring light.
Yeah.
So this is a signed copy. We both love this book. You're going to hopefully love it too. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow us on Instagram for an extra entry so you can be entered to win that for when we hit when we hit 750. I was saying 1K because it's our Road to 1K giveaway.
So, exactly. And as we get there, so we're getting close to a 750. So we're getting close to giving that book away. And when we do that, then we have several things planned between 750 and 1K. So you're going to want to make sure that you're here for that. And you're also going to want to make sure that you're subscribed in here for the 1K celebration, because we have some big plan for that. So be here. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the likes, hit the subscribe button. Okay. So tell me about your reading week, Mandy.
I read 9 books, but I only had 1 5-star read. How about yours?
So I didn't have any 5 stars this week. The majority of mine, I had like a 4.5. But I think we'll see when we get in there. I read 8, but 1 was a duet. All right. So do you have the timer ready?
I do.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So my first book is Fighting Solitude. It's part of the On the Rope series by Ali Martinez. One of my goals that I made back in May was to finish series that I started. And so, yay me, I have completed a series that I started. There was only 3 books, so I'm not sure why this took me so long. So this is about Corey. He's an MMA fighter, just like his big brother. And he has not had such a great life. You can read this book alone, but I would really read the other. It's 3 books. Like, I would read the other ones because it really kind of helps set up what happens in this last book. And you might be lost by some references. So Corey has also not had the best of life. And so he is a little down on himself at some times. And when he is younger, he meets Liv. And they become very good friends, and Liv just instantly like falls in love with him when she's younger. And he does something because he feels like he's just not good. And so he does something that kind of severs that tie between the two of them. And then they meet back up later. Liv is still in love with Corey, but Corey is in love with someone else, which kind of adds some things to it. But then something else happens, which kind of changes the whole trajectory of where these characters are going. I really enjoyed this. I liked how the series wrapped up, and it was a 4-star read for me. It was good.
Good. Okay. My first one that I did this week it was probably one of my lower rating books of the week. I wanted to love it, but I just couldn't. This is Prisoned by Marnie Mann. This is a 3-book series, and I think they're just interconnected standalones. But I read this. I mean, I got all 3 of these when we were in Vegas. So this is about Garen and Kyle. Kyle is our heroine, which gets really confusing because if you listen to the audio, it is only a male narrator. So when he's saying Kyle, I'm looking for his buddy Kyle the whole time. It just didn't work. It was hard, but it's still good narration. It was just hard. But these kids grew up on the wrong side of the track. So you had Garen, Kyle, and then their friend Billy, and they were out hustling and doing things. And something happens where Kyle leaves and for several years, and then she gets word that Billy has been killed, and so she goes home for his funeral. While she's there, she meets up with Garen, who they always had a connection, and they go out for drinks. And she then wakes up in a prison cell with Garen, like in a prison in somebody's house, like she's been taken captive in a prison cell. And they are torturing Garen to get answers out of her. And I was a little confused at parts. It felt like there was a lot of plot holes. The writing was on the wall. Like I could see what was going to happen a mile away. I really wanted to love this book. It just fell short for me. So if you guys have read the other 2 books in the series, let me know if it's worth continuing on, because I have all 3 and I don't know if I want to, like, it was entertaining, but it wasn't like grab me and keep me from being bored type entertaining. So it was 3 stars.
Okay.
Okay.
So my next book was a prison book too, because I am still on the hunt for that ultimate prison rec.
Mm-hmm.
Or read, I guess it would be. So this is Slammer by Tabitha Vargo, and this is about Christopher, also known as X in the prison system, and Lila. Lila gets a job at the prison as a nurse, and this is how she meets X. X is like one of the most dangerous prison dudes in this prison, and he ends up in the infirmary quite a bit because he's always getting into fights. It's dual point of view, so we know from his point of view, he's not really wanting to fight, but it's sort of what ends up being forced of him to survive in prison. And on these trips to the infirmary, he really takes a liking to Lila, and Lila takes a liking to him. And they start a relationship. And from there, Lila starts to do some investigating to figure out exactly why he's in prison. And she comes to the conclusion that he was only 19 when he went to prison. And she comes to the conclusion that he confessed to something that he didn't really do. He admits he has no memory of this, but he woke up to this scene. So he confesses that he must have done it. And that's how like he ends up there. So there was never a trial. There was really no investigation. So when she starts looking through into things, she comes to the conclusion he really didn't do this. And so she starts to want to free him, which then ends up with people in the prison putting basically a hit out on her. And that's how the story continues. So this story, I was really hoping that like when I first started this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the prison book I have been needing. This is going to be a 5. And then it just slowly like started to like go downhill a little bit. Then we get to the end, and I don't want to give any spoilers away in case somebody's like, oh, I want to read this. It ends very differently than you would think it should end. And I just didn't care for it. I think the author was going more for shock value, and that didn't work for me in this. I've read books with shock value that I've really enjoyed, so it's not that I just don't like shock in my books. But this prompts a question for me. Do you feel, I know how you feel, Jessica. So,
Yeah.
subscribers, comment. How do you feel about romance? Now, I looked this up. Does a romance have to have a happily ever after or happily for now? When I looked it up, I found many sources that say it needs to have an emotionally satisfying ending. It doesn't actually say it has to have a happily ever after. You can find places that will say that, but if you actually look up the genre definition, it says an emotionally satisfying ending. And that if you choose not to, you will anger your readers. But there's no like black and white thing that says to market your book as a romance, it has to have that. So, dear viewers, how do you feel about that? Jessica is like adamant. Go ahead,
Yes.
Jessica. You can rant. Go ahead.
Can I rant?
Yes.
Okay, look,
Rant.
they say you shouldn't believe everything you read on the internet, Mandy. So maybe that's that was your first clue. No, I'm kidding. No, it should. If I am reading romance, so this obviously is my opinion, and this is what I've always been told too. But I'm reading romance to escape reality. And if the book is about the couple, I expect the couple to be together in whatever capacity at the end of the book. That is a romance for me. There are several other genres out there, like women's fiction or horror or whatever, to deal with the other. Like if you're gonna kill off your people at the end, I'm gonna romance. Sorry, it doesn't. If they're not together in the end and happy, it's not a romance. I mean, ew, I don't want to read that. I'd read other genres if I wanted to read that.
Yeah, so I would agree. I mean, it does need to have some sort of like the definition emotionally satisfying
Yeah,
ending.
but
But
there has been a couple that you and I have read where it had a non-traditional
yes.
ending, and those worked. I didn't know that was what I was going into when I read it, and it still worked. And I loved them. But typically, I'm not looking for that. I don't want to be upset at the end of the book.
Yeah.
I
So
want to know
I've
if there's something.
read all over. Like I don't just have to read in the romance genre. I like a good mystery. Oh, actually, I love a good mystery book. So I've read in different genres. And so take this book, this author, I went to like her Goodreads page and it says she's a romance author. I looked her up on Amazon, romance author. So, and this book is marketed under romance, but I think it falls short even with, I don't mind when the ending is not what I wanted it to be. I don't mind when it's the like you would call non-traditional. So just looking at this, not even categorizing it, that I feel like it failed because it didn't have an emotionally satisfying ending, like taking that completely away, I would still rate this book like a 2 or a 3. It the the shock value ending just didn't work for me. I wasn't like, oh, you tricky bitch. I wasn't
Yeah.
like that at all. I was like, this is dumb. And I even called you and I'm like, you'll
Yeah,
have
you
to
did.
believe how this
Yeah.
book ended. And then in the epilogue, I'm like, it's just dumb.
Yeah.
Dumb,
And I
dumb,
would
dumb.
think, I would classify a book that ended that way as more of a thriller vibe because or like that suspenseful vibe, not necessarily a romance. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So, anyways, dear
Yay.
viewers, comment. Tell us how you feel about those endings.
Yes.
Let
Let
us
us know.
know.
Are you as passionate about it as I am? Okay.
Okay, you ready for your next one?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So I read Jinx, and this is by Tori Heat. This is a reverse harem, but it is about a girl who purchases a home that is supposedly haunted. And the day she moves into it, the girl is Savannah. The day she moves into the house, she gets locked into the house. Like the house itself has its own entity, and it like locks her in. She cannot escape. There are 3 other people in the house from 3 different eras. One's from like the 70s, one's from the 90s, one's from, I want to say it's from like the 50s. They haven't aged at all. And the house has been cursed. And once you go in, you can't get out. And so this is that story. She's the only woman, and there's 3 guys in here, and they have to figure this all out together. This one could have been great. So I gave it 3.5 stars. This one was a shorter read. It wasn't a novella, but it was under 300 pages. And I felt like everything happened pretty quickly in this book and things weren't fleshed out. And it could have been a really cool paranormal read, had paranormal romance, had we fleshed things out a little bit. It just happened way too fast. It was just too, on to the next, like onto the next guy, onto the next guy, onto the next guy. It had potential. It just needed more. But it was still okay. I still enjoyed it while I listened to it. It just needed more.
That's how I feel pretty much about all reverse harem. It's just on to the next guy, on to the next
On to the
guy.
next guy, on to the next guy. Okay.
Okay, well, next we're going to continue my angry reading.
Oh no. Oh no.
And I read One is a Promise by Pam Godwin because I was forced into it by my former bestie, Jessica.
Wait a minute. This was a poll with our readers. Don't you blame me.
I'm totally blaming you. Okay, so this book is about Danny, and Danny meets Cole in probably one of my most favorite ways a couple has ever met each other. And when she walks away from him, I take that back. I think Dr. Stanton might have the best way. But anyway, this is like in my top 5 ways a couple has met each other. And when she walks away, he hollers out, "See you later, Mrs. Hartman." And she's like, "Is that your last name?" And he's like, "Yeah." So loved it. Loved it. Anyways, so they have this epic love story that Pam Godwin then ruins when she sends him off on a work trip for a year. And so he leaves on this work trip, but then he never comes home. And eventually somebody comes to her house to tell her that he has been killed and they're so sorry. Basically, like a whole bunch of people where he was working were killed.
Mhm.
And so she doesn't really get over him. Like she keeps this Harley in her living room. I mean, it's rough for her. And then she meets Trace. And Trace, she's kind of a jerk. And he's blonde. And she starts to fall for him. And then Cole shows up. And the book ends.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to read 2 more books to find out what happens. No,
Yes.
thank you. I hate love triangles. They never work out for me. I just hate them. I hate them. I hate them. If you enjoy love triangles, though, this book is really well written. I mean, Pam Godwin writes so well. So if love triangle is something you're interested in, read this because she writes very well.
I loved this book. I love this series. And I hate love
If
triangles. And I loved it.
if you do not like love triangles, just save yourself the agony. Go
Poor
read the
Mandy.
Slammer instead if you want to feel anger.
Poor Mandy. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm so sorry. Okay.
now my former bestie will give her next review.
Fine. Okay. So my next review was
Time's up.
Don't be mean. Don't be mean.
You're wasting your time.
Or I'm gonna get aggressively bossy, okay? No, I'm kidding.
What's new?
I'm always like, it's aggressively helpful, not aggressively bossy. Okay, so my next read was Argyll's Resonance. This was this is the first book in the Ice Clones spinoff from the Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. I love the book, but look at the back of the cover. Isn't it pretty? Anyhow, this is Argyll's story. So Argyll was one of the guys that came over in the spinoff of the spinoff, which was the Ice Home thing, and he's from the island that blows up, and he has watched everybody else resonate except for him. So we've found these clones that have been dropped off on the planet now, and Argyll ends up waking up. He doesn't know about the clones yet. He ends up waking up after being abducted by people that weren't aware were on the ice planet, and him and this girl Rosalind are in a prison underground, and this is their escape, and he immediately resonates to her. Like, she is his mate, the one that he's been waiting for the whole time. They immediately resonate. She the problem because she doesn't have that, so she's going to die within a few days if she doesn't get it, and so he's very concerned about that and how you get one for her when they're in prison, so she's sick. It's a whole thing. Loved it. 4 stars. I love that damn ice planet.
It's so weird.
It's not.
Like, you're showing this weird looking blue guy, and you're like, oh, I just
look, it's so pretty. No, I love me some Ice Planet. It is like the best escape from reality. Look, aliens can be weird. Okay, alien romance can be very, very weird. I don't tend to go for the extremely weird ones, but Ruby writes it. I'm reading it. It's a great escape. Okay.
So I then went to the Deliver series and read Vanquish by Pam Godwin, obviously. This is about Van and Amber. You really have to read the series in order. I don't feel like these are standalones. They might, somebody might say that you could read them as standalones, but you're going to miss out on way too much. Yep. So you really need to read it in order. This is the second book. So definitely read the second book. If you read Deliver with us with our live show, read it. It's so good. So Amber is an agoraphobe, so she does not leave her house. Van creeps on her house to spy on Liv next door. And He thinks the house is abandoned because nobody's there. And he sees this delivery guy come twice a week and he assumes the guy's grown pot there. And so he is totally fine to hang out on this porch. And Amber has to leave her house to get her mail, or she's going, like, she has to get this order from her mailbox, and if she does not go out, she is going to basically lose her house. Like, she has to get this order done, so she's forcing herself to do this. And Van is like, what the hell is happening when she comes out, because he's been coming here like every day for a very long time, like we're talking months, and he thinks the house is empty. And this is how they meet. So Van, being Van, decides to kidnap her and take her back to his place.
My favorite.
But here's the thing. Van, I love Van. Like, once we start to really see him, deep down, all he wants is to get to know his daughter. That's like driving everything at this point. And it's just a totally different side of him. And I really loved it. I know you wouldn't have, but
No.
I cried during a scene. I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to give anything away, but I cried during a scene in this book. Like, oh, and again, Pam Godwin, even though she angers me sometimes, she's a very good writer.
Yes. Yeah. She has a series that she's writing right now that's, I've said it before, that takes place in Alaska. It's a trilogy, I think, and I am like here for it. So
I will read it as long as it's not a love triangle.
I don't know. I'll read it first just to make sure that you're okay. I'll take one for the team there. It's not a hardship, trust me.
I was gonna say, I don't think it was really taking one for the team.
Now too, I got an email from her. There's a 2-for-1 in Audible for her. I can't remember what one of the books is, but I know one of them is Sea of Ruin, and then there's another. So she's got a 2-for-1 going on. You have to go to her website and see, but there's 2 audios for the price of 1 right now.
Oh, sweet.
So just FYI, hopefully it'll still be going when this video goes up on Monday, but yeah. Okay, ready for my next book?
Yes.
Okay, I continued with S. Masquerade Obsession. I love his belly button on here. I don't know what it is about the belly button. It works for me in this book, on this cover. Just saying. Okay, so this is about Willow and Miles. So Willow is best friends with our heroine from the first book. She was on the dance team. We see that throughout this book, or a lot of it throughout this book. And she was in a relationship with Knox, who is Miles' brother. And at the beginning, something bad happens. They end up breaking up. She's utterly devastated because of the way things go down. And Miles is our goalie on the hockey team. And he has been in love with Willow since he first met her. He's known she was going to be his from the get-go. He's pissed at his brother for things that happened. And so once they break up, he's like, well, it's my turn. It's my turn now. Thank you. And so he does everything in his power to make sure that she stays in his life. And these boys are all crazy. These boys are all over the top, possessive, stalker, will do crazy things. This is dark and nuts. And I'm here for it. This is a 4-star read. I love this series so much. Just if you want her, you don't go to wine and dine her. You capture her and force her to be yours.
I bought one of the books from, well,
no, you'll have 2. Did you do the email?
Yeah, I got the first book, and then I have another book in the series.
Which is the second.
Is it the second that I have?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm waiting for the first book to come.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my first book to show up because they weren't delivered. They didn't all make it to Love in Vegas, and so she's shipping them to us.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, Jessica, let's have a little murder now.
Okay. Oh, can I just say, Teddy Hamilton narrates all of her books in this series. Just in case this happens throughout the video, there's a storm going on here right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully our video is not frozen in spots.
All right. So now on to a little murder with our romance.
Yay!
Dun, dun, dun. My next book is the second book in the Sutter Lake series by Catherine Howells. It's called Beautifully Broken Life. And this is about Tessa and Liam. And Tessa, as we have seen in the first book, she is very jumpy And we know that something has happened to her that's caused her to be very almost fearful of people. So in this book, we find out her story, which is that she is running from a very abusive relationship with a very powerful man. So she has come to Sutter Lake to escape him, like literally clear across the country to try and get away from him. Liam is a famous singer who is seeking refuge in Sutter Lake because he can't write another song. He's like got writer's block, and his label is hounding him to put out this next song. He's like past the deadline. And so he's just kind of having a little bit of a crisis because music is his passion, but being hounded by a label is not making music fun anymore. So you have somebody who is on the run and terrified that somebody's going to find her. So you are not going to want to hook up with like one of the most famous singers in the country. And so this is their relationship, and Liam really has to work for it in this one, but I enjoyed it. Catherine Cowles so far has always been a solid 4 for me in her books.
Yeah. I liked that one.
I do have to sometimes take a break though, because her whole thing is romance with murder. Like when we met her at Love in Seattle, like I got this bag that says like, what's your romance without a little murder or something like that. Like this is her niche and where she writes. So sometimes I need to take a break because like, you know what you're going to keep getting, but I always come back to her.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that one. I've liked everything I read by her. And I haven't read as many as you have, but I have liked everything I read by her. So, yeah. Okay, ready to go back to the ice planet? Because that's where we went next.
Yay, blue roosters.
This one's green.
Oh my gosh. I can't with you.
This one's green and lizardy. Loved it.
I don't see the appeal. It's just weird.
Forked tongue. Okay. That's the appeal. Think about that one.
Okay. Just
okay. So
tell
this
the viewers.
is Ruby Dix. This is the newest release in the Ice Clone series. It was released just about on the 31st of October. So I finally was able to get to this. So this is Surviving Scar. This is the second book in the Ice Clones or the Ice Planet Clones spinoff. And this is about Vivi and Scar. So both of them are clones. And Vivi is really struggling because she's found out that she's a clone, but she has memories, some memories, not a lot, but some memories of a guy back home and like being in Alaska and kind of doing a little bit of survival. She doesn't know who she is. She has amnesia to a point because she's been cloned. So while she has these little snippets, she doesn't have a lot of who she is. So she really just doesn't know who she is. And then you have Scar, who is our peacock. They refer to him as the peacock. He is always bragging about himself. He thinks that he is the best of the best no matter what. And he's a gladiator, so he's the best of the best. They immediately resonate. And she's like, no, why am I getting the worst one out of the bunch? Why? And he's like, I have the best mate. She's amazing. But it takes a lot to really get for their relationship to develop. And this one was a very much a slow burn, and they become friends before they become partners. And he learns how to be the person she needs. I loved it. Look, I loved it. He's got an alligator tail. And if you know anything about these guys, he's got 2 of something that's very important. I'm just gonna put that out there. I give it 4.5 stars. It's one of my favorite Ruby Dixon ones that I've read so far. Probably because of the dual something or other, but still. Guys, yeah.
I have so much to think about you.
Do I need therapy, Mandy?
Probably.
Why are you so red? I'm the one that read it.
I'm just laughing. I'm also sick, so every time it's your turn, I'm muting myself and blowing my nose and coughing.
Yeah.
I feel like crap.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
Still stinks. Okay, so now let's talk about your next read.
Okay. My next read, Jessica, is a book that is very different It is not alien at all, but it's very different from the books that I've read before. It had a very unique starting point for our couple.
Okay.
I think you might enjoy this one because you like kids in books.
I do.
Okay, so this is called Insta Family by Linda Cage, and this is about Lucy, who works with this guy named Duke. Duke is in his like early 20s, and he has terminal cancer. And he knows he's like on hospice, and he knows like his days are numbered. And so he basically guilts Lucy into giving him one more, like his last hurrah in the sack. Okay. And they have no relationship other than that they work together. But Lucy's just kind of a kind hearted person. So she feels like she can't deny him his dying wish. So she does it with him. And in the morning, she's sneaking out, trying to do her walk of shame, and she runs into Vaughn, who is Duke's brother. And Vaughn has been taking care of Duke through this whole thing because their parents have passed away. And so Vaughn is more like a dad almost to Duke than a brother. And he's kind of rude to Lucy when she's doing her walk of shame. And then a week after, so Duke passes away a few weeks later. And then a week after the funeral, she finds out that she's pregnant with Duke's baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I might like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Add that to the
I
list.
do want to say, though, this book sounds like it's going to be really wholesome and sweet, but then Vaughn goes through some like real mental health battles. So if you mental health battles might be a trigger for you, you would want to check triggers before you read it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So my next book, I went back to the Hockey God series.
This is just so messed up.
This week is crazy.
We are reading about fork-tongued lizard creatures.
Yeah.
And hockey gods. Like,
Obsessive.
It doesn't even make sense.
Obsessive. Sure it does. It makes sense in my head. That's all it needs to make sense. It's right up here. It's all good. It's all good.
I get the obsessive hockey gods. I just don't see the appeal to forked tongues lizard creatures.
If I have to explain that to you, well, I'll explain it to you off camera.
I know what you're going to tell me. But here's the thing. I don't feel like I'm alone in this. I think you're
Normally fork tongue wouldn't do it for me, but I know what's going on here. And Ruby just has this way of writing it where I'm like, sure, I can see the appeal. So,
all right.
Okay,
tell us about your hockey gods.
Okay. All right. So this is the fourth book. This is the latest one that's out in S. Mastery's Hockey God series. There's more coming, but this is the latest release. So this is Twisted Obsession. This is about Jacob and Melody. So we know Jake is he's not at the college anymore because these other books take place at the college where they're playing college hockey. He is in the NHL, and he is playing. He's friends with these guys. He was at that college at one point in time, but he is playing for the NHL. 2 years prior, he was in a relationship with one of his professors. She's about 10 years older than him. And she just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And he doesn't know what happened to her. Well, he's playing his game one day, and he looks up in the stands, and there she is. And there's something a little different about her, though. Like, she just, when he confronts her, she doesn't know who he is. She was in an accident, and she has lost all of her memories. And there is a husband floating around there somewhere as well. And so this is their story. He decides that he is going to take that and he is going to use that to his advantage, because if she doesn't know who she is, then she can't question the validity of their relationship. And he can use everything he knows about her to get her. This one, again, solid 4 stars. Loved it. It's great.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I know. Wonderful. Yeah, I think you can read them as standalones. I mean, but I wouldn't. I would read them in order, because you see characters from the other books come in. You see like a little bit of the plot line kind of going, like the book previous is where we start to learn about this character, and then he gets his book. So you can, because it sets it up, but it sets it up in the book before. So I don't know.
All right. So my next book, I went back to the Sutter Lake series. This is called Beautifully Broken Spirit. It's book number 3 by Catherine Cowles. You definitely want to have read the first 2, or you're not going to understand some of the stuff. And there's some pretty big spoilers. So definitely read the first 2 books before you read this one. This is about Jensen and Tuck. And Jensen has we'll just call it dating struggles. If you've read the other 2 books, you'll totally understand. She has struggled with making good choices in her mind with who she's dating. Like, it just has not worked out. So she's kind of been like, I can't be trusted. I'm done dating. Tuck, her brother's best friend, and also been a very good friend to her throughout their lives. But Tuck's dad has chronically cheated on his mom, and it's really kind of screwed with Tuck's head. And so Tuck is just like gonna always be a bachelor. He's like the playboy forever. And that's, kind of where he's at with this. And this is the book about how these 2 people who are dealing with a lot of things that are preventing them from being in a happy, healthy relationship kind of come together. Again, it's Catherine Cowles. So there's going to be this big mystery coming, in the background for our couple, because apparently you never want to fall in love if you are living in one of Catherine Cowles' towns. So anyways, great 4-star read. Loved it. And I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series.
All right. So are we ready for my last read of the week?
Yes.
Okay. So I read Men of Mayhem and Men of Vengeance by Lauren Beale. So this is, you can get it as a bind up. These are 2 books that she's now has the bind up, but when I was on Goodreads, they had them as they were separate. So this is about Sylvia. This takes place during the Prohibition. This is her Peaky Blinders inspired book. So you have 4 gangsters. It is reverse harem. You have 4 gangsters and you have Sylvia. And so Sylvia's mom owes them money, and they take Sylvia as collateral until the mom pays, and she has a certain amount of time to pay. Otherwise, they're going to hurt Sylvia. But when that day shows up, they can't quite do it because they've formed an attachment, even though things haven't quite happened between them yet. And Sylvia's had a pretty rough life. And so they decide to keep her. She becomes their mall, and they go on their crazy little spree with their chippy. This also kind of reminded me of Bonnie and Clyde a little bit too, but there was like Clyde and Clyde and Clyde and Clyde. But I loved it. It was a solid 4-star. I love Lauren Beale. I love the whole situation. So it was historical. Just, a little different. And I've never watched Peaky Blinders, but I sure as heck love to watch the TikToks about Peaky Blinders.
All right, so my next book is the next book in the Pam Godwin Deliver series, Disclaim. This is about Camille and Matthias. And Camille is abducted as a teenager, and we have met her in the first couple of books. So she is abducted as a teenager, and she's taken away from her family and from Matthias. And we get pieces kind of told a little bit in flashbacks. So if I sound like I'm not giving you all the information, it's because you don't really get all of the information until you've read the whole book. And she decides that she is going to infiltrate this sex trafficking ring by being the slave herself. And so she gets a van to drive her to this drop, and they've intercepted things so that he's able to pretend to be the exchange person and she's the slave. And when she gets there, she's bound and, blindfolded and everything. And then she's in the car and realizes that it is Matthias that has her. Dun, dun, dun. And she's been like in love with him, and he supposedly was in love with her, and so she cannot fathom how he knows what happened to her and how he would be participating in this. And as the reader, you can't fathom that either.
No.
But as Jessica would say, just keep reading.
Just keep reading. Pam Godwin has this way of turning these situations that feel like they are absolutely impossible, or these characters where you're like, no. And then by the end of the book, you're like, I'm in love. And
Yeah.
it's amazing the way she's able to do that.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then my last book of the week was called Chastely Bitten by Lexi C. Foss. And this is vampires. So we have Juliet and Darius, but this is like a different world than what we're used to. The vampires have basically taken over, and humans are blood slaves now. And that's what they're raised and trained to do, is to please their masters. So our book starts off with Juliet butt naked getting auctioned off, and Darius buys her. And he has, though, a master plan when he does this. And so things are not exactly as they seem, although Juliet really struggles because for the past 22 years, it has been driven into her mind how she is to please whoever buys her. And so she struggles a little bit with like a little bit of the change in dynamic and like being able to trust Darius. And then as the reader, you're like, ooh, can we trust him? What the hell is happening now? Type thing. It's actually a pretty fast-paced book though. Like you get like, I mean, it's you got to keep up. It's going quick. But I really enjoyed it. It was 1-star read. Different.
Yeah, I liked it. I like that series. And it is a series. So that's the first in, I think there's like, what did I say? There was like 7 or 8 books out now.
It
And
looks like there's quite a few in it.
yeah, each one, there's a few novellas as well that I haven't read, but each one is a different couple, but they're ultimately a part of this group that's trying to change the world. So you don't necessarily, it's not all vampires either. You've got some shifters and stuff in there too. So I like the series quite a bit. So they're, yeah, I like that they were fast. A lot of them are on audio, and they were quick, but they were fun reads. And they held my attention. So yeah. All right. So that is all the books that we have for you guys this week.
All right. So make sure you leave us a comment and tell us your thoughts on the romance genre and how those books end. Tell us everything. We'd love to have a conversation in the comments with you about that. Also, make sure you check back on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and now Wednesdays through the end of the year for new videos from us.
Thanks again for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video.